Walks slowly down the street with the brim pulled way down low. Ain't no sound but the sound of his feet. Machine guns ready to go. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Out of the doorway the bullets slip to the sound of the beat. Oh.
Say there, stranger. Remember me? I'm that stranger who stalks your sanity. I've been in radio silence for a while, wondering what to do next, wondering what to say next. Of course, I've said a lot already, perhaps too much in certain cases. But at the same time, there's something in me that compels me to believe that I can say something now, something new and different that I haven't said before. And the purpose of this talk is to introduce you to the coming message. And that message goes out to the world today with, let's say, a tag, hashtag, or a meme. The Great Recovery, hence the title of this talk, The Dawn of the Great Recovery. Now you might wonder why I've taken so much time before coming back to you on my channel. And actually, I had to consider and overcome a deep reticence that I have, which is the reticence to give personal advice. Now, I've said before, and it's really important that you know this, that I'm a teacher, and those who follow me on the internet are my students. The student-teacher relationship, in my mind, works best, optimally, when it is founded on the rapport of friendship. You know, I come from friendship. I come from Friendship, Maine. And I have introduced the idea of Maitre, which means friendship in Sanskrit. But I have suggested that it means more specifically, not the friendship you share with people that you know and meet in flesh and blood, but the friendship of strangers. So Maitri is the friendship of strangers. And that Sanskrit noun is the root of the title Maitreya, which has also been translated, according to theosophical traditions, as the world teacher. So am I the world teacher? Well, I don't know. It's not for me to say, but I do teach to the world through the internet and through my website. And so in one respect, I could be legitimately called a world teacher. This internet medium, YouTube and my website, nemata.org, is the platform I use to teach. I don't teach by going on a world tour. I don't have private classes. I do not teach in an auditorium. I am not associated with any university or institution of learning. So I'm right here in front of a screen using an IT or occultic device of simulation. You are not hearing my voice. You're hearing a simulation of my voice in order to teach. That's what I do, plain and simple. However, it's really important to me that the spirit of friendship permeates what I teach and what you receive. And so, overcoming my reticence, I decided that now and in the future, I'm going to use this channel to give you personal, friendly advice, exactly as you would receive from a friend that you know over time, a trustworthy person, an honest, well-intentioned, trustworthy person who is your friend. Now, friends give each other advice, and sometimes they do it very badly. You probably know that delivery is a big issue for me. So I want to point out that giving advice to friends is an art. It's a discipline. There's a way to do it. It's not about telling them merely your opinion of what they should do. It's about speaking to them intimately about what they can do, about what their options are. And I'm telling you right here, point blank, out front, that you have the option to participate in an event which I call the Great Recovery. So I designate myself as the principal and primary agent of the message of the Great Recovery. And in the process of delivering that message, God is willing, I will offer you my personal advice. And also, as appropriate, I will attempt to inform you and educate you about the situation in which you face this moment in human history, the dawn of the Great Recovery. So I will say things to contextualize my advice, but primarily all I'm doing is standing with you in cyberspace as if I were beside you like a friend who maybe is trusted, who maybe you will learn to trust, who maybe you don't trust. That remains to be seen. But I stand beside you in this virtual space, offering you whatever may prove to be the naked truth within my personal advice. Now, to contextualize this new meme, the Great Recovery, let me say this. I found out that the curiosity or interest in history, either recent history, let's say going back a century or so, coming through the 20th century into the 21st, or more distant history, going back in time, and going all the way back to ancient history. It's my experience, sadly, unfortunately, that some people, many people, seem to lack the faculty to take a serious interest in history. But I'm going to contextualize the Great Recovery first in an historical way and then in an existential way. If you know anything about history at all, and these things used to be taught in the lower levels of education and in the universities, I don't know if they are anymore. If you have a kind of an overview of the past, you know that the past of human endeavors on this planet has often been characterized by great movements. For instance, there was a golden age of Greece in the 5th century, also called the Axial Age by the historian Karl Jaspers, I believe. Then there is, the Middle Ages. Then there is the Renaissance, the Enlightenment coming forward. What else? The Romantic movement of the 18th and 19th centuries. The Protestant Reformation earlier than that, and coming forward, and you get the idea that there is a tendency, there's a necessity in framing the received accounts of history to group them into great movements or developments. I think it's inarguable that the Renaissance was a tremendous movement in human history and culture. And also, likewise, the Industrial Revolution was a moment or movement in history. And I'm here to tell you that you are now, today, 2024, and have been for some time already, living in a moment and a movement that is greater than any that has ever happened before. How is it greater? It's greater in the opportunity it presents to every single living human individual to participate in the change of the human narrative, to participate in a moment in history in which you are an active agent who plays a role in the direction that humanity goes from this moment on. So the great recovery is a moment of history that equals and excels everything you've heard about before, including, for instance, the Renaissance. And it is, in a way, a Renaissance. You know, the Renaissance, what did it mean? What does it mean? It means rebirth. And what was it a rebirth of? Well, the Renaissance was a rebirth of the lost culture of the ancient world, of the Greco-Latin heritage of humanity. So the Renaissance was a moment of recovery, and you are now living in a moment of recovery. As a thought, a notion of orientation, or a guideline to keep you on track with this notion, I'll give you a paraphrase of something I've often said before in the past, for quite a while now. I'll give you a paraphrase of it. The outcome of the world drama turns on one life at a time. Bear that in mind. That is kind of the guiding formula for the Great Recovery, which is an event that happens and progresses and develops and succeeds one life at a time. The wonderful message in that saying is that, yes, you, as a single sovereign human agent in this world, can change the entire outcome of the world drama unfolding in the world by the way you live your life. The outcome of the world drama turns on one life at a time. I suppose you could say that that statement sounds somewhat like a New Age pronouncement of empowerment, but I don't like the word empowerment. I avoid it. I find it to be corrupt and misleading. I'm not talking about empowerment here, although in a way, yes, but really principally about responsibility and participation. Now that begs the question, well, how do you participate in the Great Recovery? That's something I intend to develop. I intend to answer that question and develop it in the talks to come. The first thing I can tell you is that you do so in a parallel to what was called the recovery movement. You know, recovery is a common term. You break your leg, you recover. You get the measles, you recover. People recover from accidents. They recover from illnesses. How about recovering from the mental illness of global insanity? Well, that's what the Great Recovery is about. It is first and foremost the recovery of sanity, of common sense, and of human decency, and the return to the principle of reciprocity. According to that principle, there are many corollaries of the principle of reciprocity, but one of them is no respect that is not earned. So, when you recover, when you participate in this movement, you act in the world with a conscious and deliberate attitude. You do not give respect to anyone who does not earn it. You do not submit to those who demand that you respect them for one reason or another, whatever it may be, nor do you demand that they respect you. You see, you take a neutral ground, and let's see how reciprocity plays out. You know, reciprocity is an enormous problem that we are now beginning to recover from. You may recall that over a number of years now, a dozen or more, there has been an event of mass migration of refugees into Europe and into other parts of the world, America and Canada, Australia, New Zealand. And when you look at that event, when you look at the behavior of the people who are alien to those lands and cultures coming into that world, being brought into that world, trafficked in some cases, you find that there is no reciprocity. They show no reciprocity, show no gratitude, no respect, no decency, no civil and common consideration for the people in the land to which they have been brought, you see. That doesn't play. The Great Recovery is the moment when you say, no, this is completely objectionable and unacceptable, and I will not play along. I will only engage in human relationships and social relationships which are honestly, sincerely, and openly reciprocal. So there you see already in their words how I'm giving you personal advice, but I'm framing it and contextualizing it in a certain way. I want to emphasize that the overall frame, the overarching and guiding idea of the Great Recovery goes back to the recovery movement, which was at its peak, I believe, certainly in the United States, and not only there, in the 1980s going into the 1990s. Now, you may know that there was a movement called 12-Step Recovery, which was founded in the 1930s, I believe, by a man named Bill Wilson. And that created a movement called AA, or Alcoholics Anonymous. And the program of the recovery for alcoholics had 12 steps. And that 12-step model became the paradigm for a number of other spin-off recovery movements, such as ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, NA, Narcotics Anonymous, GA, Gamblers Anonymous, and CODA, Codependence Anonymous, and many, many more. So there was a vast proliferation of recovery movements that grew out of the nuclear group of AA. Now, the Great Recovery might also, possibly, who knows, wilder things have happened. It might also be the nucleus for a similar type of 12-step movement or program. And I can say that I can see that developing. And as it develops in my mind, I'll present it to you step by step. But it might not be a 12-step program. It might just be, say, a 9-step program. Now, do you know the first step of Alcoholics Anonymous, upon which all the other programs for recovery are based? Quote, "We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable." End quote. And that line, that proposition, as I said, is the first step. And it was taken up and modified in all the other variations of recovery movements, or 12-step programs, as they quaintly used to be called. So there is a similar formula for the Great Recovery. I'm not going to tell you what it is in this talk. I probably will start the next talk with the rephrasing or reformulation of the first step. After all, I'm not talking about being an alcoholic or a child of alcoholic or a sex addict or a gambler. What am I talking about? What are you recovering from? I admitted that I was powerless over what? That my life had become unmanageable. That is not quite the language that I'm going to use. I'm going to talk in a novel way, inventively, putting the proposition of the Great Recovery into its own unique syntax. God is willing, such is what I intend to do. So then, as I bring this talk to its conclusion, I invite you to anticipate how this new language might develop. And I want to advise you, here I go, I advise you beforehand to think about a couple of the contributing factors that I myself consider in creating that new syntax. One factor is what is to be recovered. What are you going to recover? Well, I've already said sanity, reason, common sense. But what are you recovering from? Not recovering from addiction to alcohol or having a dysfunctional family or codependency, although in a way you might be recovering from codependency with whom? You see, the unique spin of the propositions of the Great Recovery identify the origin of the problem that you are recovering from. What is the problem that you and I and everyone, no one can be excluded, what is the problem that we are recovering from? I will comment on this. I will try to contextualize it from various angles. For instance, one of the angles I look forward to developing in a talk is recovery from the addiction to social media. Okay? But to conclude this talk, along with the meme or hashtag, the Great Recovery, I want to introduce another term. And the purpose of this term is identification. It's the way for you and I who seek to participate in the Great Recovery to identify the nefarious agents who have produced the conditions in society from which we now begin to recover. What am I going to call these nefarious agents? Because naming them is essential to the clarity of the propositions in this 9-step program. As a matter of fact, on record, in my writings and talks, which go into hundreds of hours, I've already devoted considerable time to this crucial act of identification. And in Not in His Image, for instance, I identified the root of the historical root of the evil and insidious program of master race ideology, which today manifests in the agenda of the globalist technocrats, such as the WEF. And I have used various terms, including coded terms like the Albanians. And I have explained that 4,000 years ago, there was an obscure religious sect that stands at the origin of the evil ideology permeating the world today. And I've talked at length about it, and that's about the problem. In these talks, I'm not going to reiterate what I've said before. You can go and look it up. It's all there. I've said it again and again many times. But I am going to assign, again, a meme or hashtag to that group of human animals living among us on the planet who are responsible for the horrific crime against humanity from which you can now recover. And the name I give to them specifies that they have, those human beings, these are human beings, that they have a particular signature of two elements. First, they are predators. And second, they are parasites. Now, you know that predators exist all through nature, and I don't know what your opinion might be about predators like owls, eagles, wolves, oh yeah, the great feline species that I love and adore, predation, as Carlos Castaneda said, is the topic of topics. And I do agree, and I've talked about it extensively. You're in a symbiotic natural habitat where there is predation all around you in the non-human world. But there is a special case of predation in the human world. And I have done my level best to describe how this predation operates and what is the origin of it. But that is not going to be the subject, apart from occasional references, in my talks to come. You see, predation is one thing. It's all around us in nature. And there are social predators, psychopaths. Political and governmental leaders are criminal psychopaths. They are predators that prey on the populations they are supposed to represent. But there is a unique hybrid of a predator that is also a parasite. And you can call that creature a predacite. So I'm talking about the predacites. I admitted that I was targeted. I admitted that I am targeted by the agenda of the predacites. This is where the formula of recovery begins on the first step, the first proposition. It's not we. The outcome of the world drama turns on one life at a time. It's you and I. I admitted that I am targeted by the agenda and machinations of the predacites among us. See, this is where it begins. And if you can agree on that and take that proposition to heart and make it your own, well, damn good for you and fucking A. Because who knows, it might lead to something quite wonderful. Now, in conclusion, I'm going to take a rather wild spin and refer you to the image for this upload, which is a picture of a snow leopard in the remote fastnesses of the Himalayas. And why do I use this image as, let's say, the token animal or power animal, if you want to use the correct term, from indigenous shamanism all around the world? Why do I choose the snow leopard and bring it to your attention? It's always helpful to have an image in your mind of something that the mind formulates in a rather abstract or general terms. It's extremely helpful in focusing the mind to have a totemic image or an icon. People use icons all the time. The internet runs on icons. So the snow leopard I designate as the icon of the Great Recovery. Now, it's no secret that I have a deep, enduring love and even reverence for the great predatory cats of this world. The puma, the leopard, cheetah, the lion, tiger, and the cougar, and many more. I love and revere these animals. Why? Well, I see in them something that I see in myself, something that I find in myself. And what is that? It is the skill to kill. That's what I see in them. And so I see myself as a predator. But in what sense do I mean that? Remember that the other human animals living among us who are conspiring in a crime against humanity that has culminated in recent years and from which we are now recovering are predacites. They are also predators, and they prey on their own species. Well, I'm not a human predator who wants to prey on the human species, but I am a dangerous animal who wants to take out the predacites. You get that distinction? And so I see in myself a reflection, or I see in these animals a reflection of my human intention, my commitment, my sacred commitment to use my power and intelligence and even risk my life to be a killing animal that takes out the enemies of life. And additionally, what I see in those magnificent feline predators is beauty. Beauty. Beauty is the ultimate weapon. The beauty you hold in yourself, the beauty in the way you see life, and in the way you can be seen by others, is the ultimate source of the triumphant killing power. That's a strange message, perhaps. I don't know how that's going to go down with you, but I leave you with that message. And I leave you to consider and reflect on that. That beauty is what triumphs in the great recovery. So much of what has happened, so much of what has damaged and traumatized the human world for who knows how long now, has been an assault of ugliness, vile and repulsive ugliness. And what is the countermanding force to ugliness? What is greater than this ugliness that you see imposed on you from so many angles? The ugliness of lies, of deceit, of hypocrisy. What is the source of that ugliness? I'll talk about that in different ways than I have before. But I also want to take you to the solution. And the solution is in beauty. But not just any kind of beauty. Not just some vapid or subjective aesthetic impression of beauty. No, this is the unique beauty. This is the beauty that fuels and directs the great recovery. This is the beauty that kills.